Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatirons Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatirons.com and stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning. Welcome back, everybody, to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This is episode number 83. At least as we're recording this, so if it's wrong, don't hold it against me. I don't know. It's an episode. That's all that matters. And hold on. Okay. Yeah, Tasso is now officially bowed out, so who knows what happened, but we'll find out. So we've got Dussex joining us from Pikes Peak Raceway, and we've got a guest sitting in with us today. We've got Trey Tyler joining us here. And Trey, let's see. I wanted to bring you on for a couple of reasons, but you've been one of the main reasons is you've been really active in the Rocky Mountain SCCA time trial scene for a couple of years now. And so maybe as a place to start, how did you find SCCA time trials? How did you find going to the track with the SCCA? And just kind of how did you get into driving?
Yeah, so I've always liked cars, motorsports. Was an avid Gran Turismo player for as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
So, I finally, when I got to a point where I felt like I could afford like a sports car or whatever, entertaining the idea of going out and maybe doing open lapping is the first thing that we decided to do. And one of my cousins had an RX-8 and was like, "Hey, I would go with you." So it's like, cool, like let's go check it out. So I had this, new STI, and not a whole lot had been done to it at that point in time. So took it out and loved it. Super slow. I think I was running like 118 was like my best time at high plains. Super real timid, not using the track. 218. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then I don't know exactly how I decided to do the HPDE. I think somebody at the track had mentioned it, so I ended up signing up for NASA to do DE1, and then Ryan was my instructor. Didn't look anything like the picture in his email, by the way. There's this little tiny icon of Ryan with no beard, and I was like, I don't know who this person is.
Long hair.
Yeah.
Man.
So when he actually showed up and said, "Hi, I'm Ryan," I was like, "Are you sure?" But so I had some great instruction from him, and then through him I met Robbie Thompson. And Robbie Thompson was the first person who was just like, "Hey, you should like come out and compete with us in SCCA." And I was like, "Oh, I don't know about that. Like, I don't have a lot of experience, and I don't know about competition. Like, I'm just trying to get into it." And he's like, "It's really not that big of a deal. It's a really relaxed, laid back atmosphere. Great community."
Do you mean Robbie Jackson?
Robbie Jackson.
Yeah, not
Yes.
Thompson. I was like, who's Robbie Thompson? Robbie Jackson.
I don't know why.
Robbie Jackson. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, Robbie Jackson.
Well, and
Sorry,
real
Robbie.
quick too, as we're pausing there, I got to ask. So, was it Gran Turismo that caused you to get an STI? Is
No, it wasn't.
There?
I've always loved Subarus, just
Okay.
like from the rumble and just how wild the aesthetics were. I'm a child at heart, and I'm okay with a loud, obnoxious looking car. So I've always wanted one. Never could afford one. Actually, the first sports car I bought, I got a Mazda Speed 6 because it was similar, but it was only 16 grand. Whereas at the time,
Okay.
if I wanted a WRX or an STI, it was going to cost me significantly more.
Sure.
So that was like my alternative
Okay.
to that. But no, it wasn't Gran Turismo that got me into
Okay.
Subarus for sure. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know, that was just a thing.
Had to ask, but all right. So Robbie
Yeah.
Jackson inspired you to not only just go out to the track and drive, but he's like, "Hey, you can actually compete, and it's not that much different than just doing the HPD events."
Yeah, for sure. And he was supposed to do the whole season with me, and that was like our pact. And that's what got me to sign up. I was like, all right, we're doing it. So I talked with Ryan a bit and found out that he, ran that as well. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I know somebody. And
Sure.
Showed up to the first event just as a stranger, and I'll say that they were very welcoming. People were walking up to me and just like, "Who's this?" and "Tell me about your car." And Kevin was there, and he wanted to do tech inspection like right away because I missed the driver's meeting because didn't realize there was one.
Nice.
Yeah. So setting bad examples right out of the gate. I'd say the first event was pretty miserable experience, just in terms of managing my vehicle, because I went out there and gave it 100% lap after lap after lap after lap, and wasn't paying attention to the right things on the car. My coolant temps hit like 240. Was pulling 11.8 degrees of timing. My dam dropped down to like 0.2, and I was freaking out. Like, I don't know what's happening in my car. And what I needed was someone to just be like, just chill out a little bit on the car, just do a couple laps and then relax.
Sure.
So that was a learning experience,
Well, and what year was that? Was that 2020?
This was just last year, 2021. Yeah. So
at
it was
La Junta too.
La Junta. Yep.
Okay.
It was 95 degrees that day.
Yeah, that 95 degrees cars, I mean, they don't like going fast when it's that hot oftentimes.
Yep.
So, well, but it as much as challenging as maybe that was, or maybe as unexpected that was, it sounds like you still had a good time. And obviously you came back and did it again.
Yeah, so I like it. It was the people that were there too. So Dan was one of the guys that I met that day, because I was running around like a chicken with his head cut off, freaking out about the car. And he helped me just like calm down. I'm a pretty high strung person, so he was like, "Hey, just relax. Like let's come up with a plan, right?" So we were gonna log something, and I reached out to Harvey because Harvey tuned the car, and I was just like, "I'm not sure what's going on. This is the first time I've really done something with the vehicle since it's been tuned, so I just want your support." And Harvey was like, "Cool, just send me the logs as soon as you get it, and I'll look at it today." Right? I don't know if he can do that for everybody, but I felt like a lot of support from those guys. And I mean, the same thing happened at the very next event in Pueblo. Like, my oil pressure was really, really low. Turned out it was the oil cooler radiator combo I was using, and my oil pressures were like at 40 psi at wide open throttle, red line.
This is the radiator that has the oil cooler built into it that tends to be troublesome.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
CSF Lick Motorsports one or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm. It did a great job keeping the oil cool, I'll tell you that. But the pressures just weren't good. And I'd like, yeah. But anyways, Dan was there at that one as well, and he was the one that told me, he's like, "This is probably what it is." So I was like, okay, well, I'll just go home and just unplug it, right? And Dan happened to have another oil cooler with him that he was going to get rid of. So I bought that from him, went home, changed it out that night, came back, and oil pressures were fine. So, and then after that, like, it's been more focus on the driving and being a better driver. I've been really lucky to not have a bunch of issues with my vehicle since then.
Well, and when you started off, it sounds like the car was relatively, like, it was lightly modified, and you've now kind of progressed and built the car up more.
Yeah, I did a lot of, and it's funny because I like frown at people that say that they have to do this before they come out the first time. We try really hard to get new blood out there, and I was the same way. If you talk to me, I was just like, well, I have to make sure that I have all of these things done to the car before I even take it out. So I did do as many reliability mods I can think of. I made sure I had an AOS. I swapped over to equal length headers. I did the cylinder for cooling mod. I had a bigger radiator, like anything that would potentially add reliability to the vehicle. I had done that, but anything that would actually, besides power, that would make the car go fast, I hadn't done it. So I was on, actually, from your recommendation, I was sitting on factory coils the first couple times I went out, because I was messaging you on the chat with flatirons.com, and I was looking at doing the tine suspension setup with the automatic adjustments with the computer. And you were like, well, how often have you taken it out, and what does it feel like? And I was like, oh, well, I haven't actually been on track yet. And you're like, well, why don't you just feel it out, because the suspension's not terrible, and then go from there. So anyways, I had already had the power stuff done. And then, Ryan's been, the primary reason that my wallet's been taking massive hits since then. Yeah, you know what you need is some fuel coilovers. You know what else would be really nice? A new diff.
Oh yeah, the diff.
You need that.
I felt bad. The guys were twisting your arm pretty good on that one.
We were definitely internet shaming you on like the comments and podcasts, and it worked though. I mean,
well,
the shaming part.
And I think you did. I mean, you had. I mean, when you start off, what we've tried to kind of instill in people is that if you can keep the car pretty close to stock, I mean, you're not going to be as fast, but you're going to get out there, see what it's all about, and find out, what is the car doing? What is it not doing? What is it doing? What is it not having trouble doing? Like maybe the brakes are sufficient with just a set of pads, but then like maybe the cooling system needs to be addressed. And you get out there on track a few times and you can actually find out where the car needs attention, and then that's where you put your energy versus just kind of trying to guess. And then maybe you spent your budget for the season in places that you didn't actually need to spend it. And then you end up chasing other issues. And that you kind of followed that path. I'd say you're one of the early people that kind of we were able to convince to go down that road with us.
Just slow down just a little bit until I got a great turbo at the end of last season.
Yeah. Even still, I mean, I made the joke too. I mean, when we started talking about what mods, you're like, I want to do sway bars, I want to do this. I'm like, stop all that. I was like, do this mod. Like, it'll cost as much probably, or maybe save you a little bit over the sways. But if you do this and this, you'll have a much better outcome, which in that case, I think was like custom built feels and rear lower control arms. So,
yeah. My big thing at that point was I didn't like how much the body was rolling. So that's why I was thinking, sways. And then you guys had convinced me just to do the coils for now and then see what it's like. And then lo and behold, the first event that I went out with, the feels like I was getting lift off oversteer and like I could power on oversteer. And this was with factory turbo at the time. So it's like, okay, cool. Like at least I have all that rotation that I want with the new alignment and the coils. I still would like to I wish that car was just flat around corners, but it's all right.
One step at a time.
You need some movement though too, especially on street tires, So this is all in 2020, right? So you coilovers, lower control arms. Oh yeah, 2021. Coilovers, lower control arms, and I mean this oil cooler, and that's pretty much it, right? Like other than that,
I did some playing around with brake pads throughout the year. So I had the factory pads that I killed in like 2 events, and that was before the competition. Those were like the 2 events where I was running the 2 18s. I still managed to kill the brakes. Then I got a set of PFC 2-piece rotors from Dan up in Denver, where you got your super tie car from Dan. And so I got those PFC rotors, and he had pads with them. So I tried the PFC pads, which felt a lot like, they're street pads, so it felt very similar, and it didn't fade quite as much, but it just didn't have the bite that I needed. So then we tried R10s from G-Lock, and then ultimately ended up with R12s, and I think that's the sweet spot for my cars, those R12s.
We should clarify, so that yours is a 20 STI?
It's a 20, yeah. So it's the 6-pot brakes.
Yeah, the Brembo 6-piston fronts, and then the 2-piston rears, but it is the bigger brake set that the newest STIs had. Yeah.
Yep.
And so far to date, that's with the pads, it's working out well for you?
It's been great. Yeah. I don't hardly ever get fade. I do have the Veris Engineering brake cooling ducts. And I think because of that, they recommended not going any higher than the R12s. After talking with G-Lock, they said you're just not going to get as much heat. You need to kind of plug them up in that case. But it does what it needs to do. I mean, the car stops great. I just think if anything, like lowering the weight of the vehicle would be the best thing for me.
Sure.
I don't think I can lose much more weight out of the vehicle either in max class without bumping to max 1, because I'm already, the car from factory is like 3,500 pounds, 3,450, something like that. And right now it's like 3,160.
It was the full interior, 95%.
Right? I did take the back seats out. But otherwise, everything, it's full interior. Still has carpet, still has speakers, everything.
Yeah.
But you think about how much those wheels,
savings.
The wheels are 28 pounds from factory. Those 2018s and up, the 19s that they come with, those things are heavy.
Yeah.
So
these are the not the BBS, the Yankees, right?
They're just snowflakes. I don't even know what they are.
Yeah,
I think they're made. Yeah, I think they're the Yankees. Yeah, because the BBSs are like what Ben has on his car.
Yeah, the BBSs are forged, so they would be lighter. But yeah, when it's not the standard wheel, Subaru's not too terribly concerned about weight savings for those. It seems like.
I think those the BBS aren't those 17s?
They're 18 by 8.5.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. They had 17-inch BBSs, but that was like in the GDs.
In the GDs, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 17 by 8s or something.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of weight to save and still keep most of your interior. So that in and of itself is impressive. But
seats is a big one too.
Oh yeah, I did swap out
those
both
stock
the seats.
Seats were super heavy. I mean, with the heated seats and their power and the driver's side, right?
Power driver side, and they were both heated. They're heavy for sure.
Hell yeah.
Well, and
so
go ahead.
So in the tuner, like in your first year, 2021, how did that go? Like it started off kind of rough. You started picking up some momentum. Then what happened?
Well, I was really surprised. So first one was just kind of a disaster. I was like, I don't know, I was running 1 minute at La Junta. And the second event, I was kind of just watching other people's times. And I was watching video from Scotty. And I think he had ran like I don't know, it's an old video. So he was running like a 146 or something at Pueblo. And I just watched it and was talking to Robbie Jackson. And he was out there and it's like, hey, there's this guy out here who just ran like a low 46. And it was Ben Martin. And I was like, oh, well, I guess we won't be competitive, when we go out. And that's fine. Like I'm here for fun and it's okay. And then I don't know, after a couple sessions, I was like, oh man, I'm only like two tenths off of these guys. Like I'm sitting in fourth place and I'm up there with them. So it's like, this is possible. And I don't know, I managed to bring home the win at Pueblo by less than a tenth of a second, maybe. Like Alice was just right on me at Pueblo. And it was like a 145, 2 or 3 or something like that. And then we came back later that year and then I ran like almost another second faster, running a 144 or something.
So that was was that the first time that you were able to get up towards the front of the pack in your class?
I mean, that's what just surprised the heck out of me because I've been watching all these things. I was like, there's no way that I'm going to be fast, especially knowing that, how things have been the previous events, like going to the DE and seeing what I was running at High Plains and then what I ran at La Junta. It's just like, I don't know. There's a missing confidence for sure. I did not go out there thinking that I was going to be able to be competitive. And then after that, it really changed for me. It was like, okay, cool. Like if I can hang with these people that have been doing it for a while, then let's go. And let's try to be more serious and see what we can do. And then went to High Plains and ran 203, where my previous best was I think
like
at the DE with it was like 213. So shaved like 10 seconds off. Just getting real aggressive with the curbs and more confident in braking late. I would say though that was the best thing of the driver's education course was it was the part that I didn't like at the moment because I thought it was a waste of a session was the braking drills. So they queued us all up and we had to like do an eighth of a mile and then just slam on the brakes. Like they wanted us to deliberately engage ABS if we could.
Right.
And that was like a real eye opener because I mean everybody can take a corner fast on the streets or in the mountain, or everybody can floor it from red light to red light or green light, whatever. But like you don't ever just slam on your brakes. Like that's not something I feel like people just do to learn, so that was an unknown on the car. And it was really necessary, I think, to learn to go fast was to learn to stop.
Give you an idea of how quickly the car can actually drop its speed. So like give you an idea of when you can actually brake. You don't have to brake as soon as you see the 5 marker on the back straight at High Plains. You can actually get in to the 5 mark, maybe even the 4 mark. Or if you're brave, like Scott, I think brakes at the 1.5. That's for professionals, I'd say.
Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, that's definitely an aspect of a car that you wouldn't normally test because it wouldn't work well on the street.
Yep.
So you got 203s at High Plains, right? On RS4s, right?
On RS4s, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's and we're still talking in 2021. So this is like you starting in that year and then going back towards the end of the year to High Plains and shedding off over 10 seconds from your personal best.
Yeah. I didn't improve much for the second event at High Plains. I shaved another couple tenths of a second off. Ryan was super upset with me because I was aiming for 202s and I couldn't do it, man.
Yeah.
Just couldn't do it.
All right. Well, now, so I've heard some other parts of this story as far as how the time went down, and that's the other reason that I wanted to bring you on to talk on the podcast, which is you did a decent amount of work in a driving simulator at High Plains as you were trying to find ways to shave time off your lap.
Yep.
And obviously, well,
it works.
I guess how much of that was a part of you going from a 218 to a 213 all the way down to a 203 all on the same season?
I think it played a huge role. I mean, I didn't know that I had it. I did figure out that some of these local courses were on Aceto Corsa before Pueblo. So I said I was watching Scotty's laps over and over and over again. Well, I installed Aceto Corsa. I've got my sim rig right over here, and I play on my computer, which is over here, and installed Pueblo. And I found a 2015, like a VA STI that's stock. And I was like, okay, well, it might not be perfect, but it should be similar. And that was my goal. Like, let's just see how close can I get to that type of time and figure out, what lines should I be taking. It's not perfect, like especially in turn one. If you do a track walk with Ryan, he'll talk about just the angle of the road and where it kind of flattens out midway to the outside of turn one, and that doesn't translate very well in the sim. But if you're hugging on the inside like you would anyways, just keep that line. I think it really helps, and it definitely helped with High Plains. I used a different car to kind of practice with High Plains. It was like a little Civic or something, just to try to get good with carrying speed. But I don't know that. I think it definitely helps. For this year, we're going to go to Heartland Motorsports too in October for Grid Life, and I expect that I'm going to spend a lot of time kind of practicing for that as well. If anything, at least to just know where you need to be and what corner's coming up next. Like, I've got a hairpin coming up. Like, don't think that it's a 90 degrees or turn and you can carry too much speed.
Well, and I had not heard of it. That might have actually been when Ryan mentioned it the first time I had heard of Aceto Corsa. Because I mean, most people that are listening have probably heard of Gran Turismo, maybe iRacing, Forza, but Aceto Corsa I had not heard of that. But so maybe just to Trey or Des, explain just for people that aren't familiar with what that is. What is this driving program?
You want to take it, or I can do that? That's fine. I'll take it.
Yeah, you're the computer whiz.
Yeah. I mean, it's very similar to those other programs, to like Gran Turismo and to Forza. I don't think I would say that the physics is absolutely spot on, at least for the standard Aceto Corsa. Like, there's different variants like Competizone and stuff like that, which looks better. It's more polished. It has a better user interface, but it's very open and you can mod it. And that's just why I think it's got a huge community behind it, because you can do what you want to with it. If there's not a car that's in there, like, you can go and model it and build it. If you've got a way to like 3D scan cars in and then just kind of play with it, tweak the settings and get it to mimic and feel similar to what that car feels like in real life, like, you can do it if you have the know-how.
Well, and this is where also local tracks get put into the program too. So so there is Pueblo, there is High Plains. Here in Colorado, probably across the country, the majority of even smaller tracks that you wouldn't see like on a national series or not national circuit would probably be in this program. So if you wanted to practice it, you could with the system.
If someone's taking the time to make the courses, like, I was really surprised to see La Junta on there. To be honest with you, I think that was an Eco Sim racing track. The guy that made it, EKO, is the name of that. And so if you search it, you can find his tracks and stuff. He's got a High Plains and a Pueblo, and PPIR's on there too. I think that one is real deceiving though. It's super easy to be brave in the sim.
Oh, sure.
And when you get out on a track like PPIR and you're going around that roval, like, it is very different. You have a lot more inputs and
walls.
And walls.
Hitting them isn't as big of a deal on the sim. We did try a couple times at Treys House where we did like simulated motion, and every time Trey would run over a curb or something, I basically like jumped his chair.
Oh,
it was too much. There's
Yeah.
alcohol involved though too, but
Well, I guess you got to try it to find out.
Yeah.
poor boy Sim for sure.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, we've got,
Right.
I mean, there's a lot of other folks, at least in SCCA, that are doing it. I know like the RM Solo guys are really avid simmers and they get together a lot. But we've had a couple little events like, well, I'll probably do, well, I don't know if I have time to do one before High Plains, but just I'll run it as a server in my home,
Mhm.
and then everybody can connect to me. And then I have like a Discord server. So like a lot of the time trials you get on and we'll have a couple drinks and just run
Run the course.
run the course and
Yeah.
see what you can do. And after you qualify, then we have like an actual race. And that's kind of fun. And it's funny because a lot of us don't have any real skills when it comes to racecraft. Like once you get close to each other and you're trying to pass people, it gets real messy real quick. So I'm cool with being on track with these guys for time trials, but if we're gonna race, nah.
Wheel to wheel, not so
Not
much.
right now. Not right now.
Yeah.
Pueblo's pretty funny because there's so many, like, the inside of the track is so open and there's so many like little caveat like ways to kind of supersede corners.
Mhm.
I feel like we've punted each other off of it and then all of a sudden they're like a half a lap ahead of us. Like, what the fuck just happened?
Just going from 2 straight to 7, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Just straight across
A little shortcut.
in the race.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, once, because it keeps the times on what everybody's running, and when all of a sudden someone runs like a 58-second lap, and at Pueblo, you're like, what happened?
Something
Nothing,
happened.
man. I'm just fast. Just fast.
Man. Well, and I mean, so discovering that in your first year of driving at the track, I mean, that's you that's 2 big steps because you're all of a sudden driving at the track at speed, starting to compete, and then finding this other tool to actually spend a lot of time or an amount of time learning the track as well.
Mhm.
And just like with the speed of that progression, I mean, to me, it seems like that, like you said, it has to be a part of the way that you're able to make that quick of a progression
I think so. Yeah.
in speed. And I mean, certainly when you go to a new track, you have to learn the track. I mean, you if you don't know if you're on a straightaway, is the next turn going to be something where you just have to do a lift and carry as much speed through as possible, or is this something where you're going to go down to first gear?
Yep.
Like knowing what you're in for, knowing what the track is like going around it, and which corners are fast corners, which corners are slow corners. That's a big part. Like, I mean, that could be your first time or two out to a track, is just really getting comfortable with knowing the layout of the track. But then you can skip those first 2, kind of like call them throwaway track days, by going into the simulator and actually really getting familiar with the track.
And that's the whole point. And I'm already experiencing that with Heartland Motorsports. Like there's one, I don't know, you come out of a really tight corner and then there's this long straight and it just barely comes off to the left before you've got a brake zone and then you cut right. And the first couple of times I was running it, like I was turning in way too late and just, as Ryan would eloquently put it, just yeet off into the grass.
Yeah.
Right. So I did that a few times, and then after like the 10th lap, it's like, okay, I need to turn in right about here because I can't see it yet, but I know that curb is right there, and that's a good turn in. And hopefully with some more practice, like I can throw away what I would need in terms or skip those couple slower laps, and it's going to make that event so much better. Like because I feel like if you can qualify faster out of the gate, you can kind of alleviate some of the traffic issues that you'll have, which makes your next session better, which makes your next session better. It's all about just kind of skipping the line basically. And that does have an impact. Like I felt that at Grid Life last year and at PPIR, just being stuck in traffic. And I feel that even with SCCA, like if we don't, that's why I bug Ryan about pre-gridding all the time. Like, hey, can you just like make an estimate and put people, and sometimes he's like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Right.
So you just got to try to get up in grid or just give yourself space. Like there's a strategy to that. And, you just got to just figure out how to get out of traffic. Because if you're stuck behind it, you're not going to go fast. And then you're just stuck in it again the very next session. So using the sim, I think, is key to hopefully alleviating that.
So world-class instruction, sim racing, the right parts, and seat time, right?
And seat time. It's a good formula. Yeah. It's a good formula. Well, and I before we move on, I just want to talk about the driver sim as a tool, because like you said, like with the Assetto Corsa, you can pick these different cars and different tracks, but sometimes the physics isn't quite right. So like there's pieces of that experience that are really helpful, like just learning the course, knowing where you're at, knowing where you're going is part of it. But then I think one of the reasons that people can become overconfident when spending a lot of time in a sim is that there's certain things that aren't quite right, but you can use to manipulate and go faster.
If you jump in with a car that's way more capable than your car in the sim, you're going to build way too much confidence. I mean, I'd rather be in a heavy just dog and be careful than going out thinking my car can handle like a GT3 car, because it can't. you know.
Well, and Scotty started playing a lot in Pikes Peak because his long-term goal is to run up Pikes Peak. But one of the things that he's started talking about is he's actually on the mountain as we're recording this, so couldn't be part of it. But it's a mountain, there are actual cliffs, and like when you're playing a video game, you're playing a video game. But if like you're trying to actually really drive and learn the road so you can actually drive it at speed, you have to maybe convince yourself that like, no, these cliffs that I'm looking at, like I have to treat them as real cliffs, because you have to be there's going to be more caution in the real world than there would be in just a video game. Because if you go off and do like a tumble, you can just hit the reset and you're like, ooh, glad that wasn't, glad I didn't really do that. And let's try that again. But it's just like, are you really learning a line, or are you just being kind of pushing way harder than you normally would? And then you're not really gaining anything.
I was thinking about that the other night, because like you really, when you hop in the sim, you need to be the same person that you are when you go to the track. That's the only way that you're going to improve when you do go to the track. If you're going out there just being silly in the sim, like I'm just going to try to like see if I can take this flat out. Like, are you really going to do that? Probably not. Right. So my braking zones are similar, and like I try my best to not go off, even though it doesn't matter because I'm in a sim. But yeah, if you can have that kind of mentality going into it, like if Scotty's running the hill climb in Assetto, like don't go off, because you're not going to want to go off in real life, But it's a risk reward thing too. Like, going to high plains, I just don't feel like it's as high of a risk, so I might be a little less careful. But in his, like the hill climb, that would just scare the hell out of me. No thanks.
Well, and I think that's where like the people that spend a lot of time at the track, where it's like if you have the ability to actually spend a lot of time driving, it's kind of easy to discount spending time in the sim because it isn't real. It is like, it's close. Let's call it 70 to 80% maybe in the best case scenario of what it's really like to be out there, but it's only 70 to 80%. And so actual seat time that is 100% reality maybe is a little bit favorable. But I think like that's where I've come to it, is like, it really, if you realize that it's a tool, and that it's a tool that's going to be as effective as you are using it, it will be as helpful as you are using it properly, then that's where it can be a real advantage to help you learn a track, find techniques to discover where you're losing time, where you can pick up time, finding out what the line is, those sorts of things. It's a tool to get you like 70 to 80% of the way there without having to go and put miles on your car, possibly
pay entry fees,
mechanical issues, whatever. You can actually spend lots and lots of time learning the track and using the tool. And then I think the best case scenario is then you can actually get the best result when you actually go to the track. So the best result for the money spent of going to the track as well.
Yeah.
And something you were saying the other day, I think is pretty interesting, is about how like you did the sim, you drive, you do the sim, you drive, you do the sim, and now you're getting to a point where like you kind of hit like a plateau on the sim, say like in high plains, and then you keep driving, and now you're getting to this point where like, oh shit, I'm finding more time in the sim again from driving in real life. So it's kind of like, it can be one of those things that kind of goes hand in hand too, where like as silly as it sounds, the real life driving can help your sim driving, and the sim driving can help your real life driving, which it's kind of a funny. I don't think people think about it the other way. And you had mentioned that literally like 2 days ago, and I was like, that is kind of like, that's awesome. I think.
Well, if that's the case, then that's kind of like a proof of concept. Like if you're actually finding a little bit of time actually driving the car, then you apply like the same braking point, the same line, the same corner entry, and then it's faster in the same, and then you find a way to take it even a little bit further. Now the two are informing one another, and then that's where that's how you're able to progress much faster.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Hell
the
yeah.
ideal situation.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
It's a good spot to get in, and I guess like that's a good point too, is where it really is helpful to measure whether or not you're in a good simulation because you have real world experience. It's like if, like you said, like you're trying a car and you found a car that was close to what your experience on the track was. Well, okay, so then this model, this car on this track, this modeling is good, and so then that's a good place to build from. Whereas, like, because we were playing around in high plains, and there was an STI that something was weird with it, where like it just had no grip, and it was like having driven at the track, we were all playing around with it and realized like this is not right. Like I don't know what it is. I don't know exactly. I can't pinpoint what's wrong with it, but I know that this is off enough that I don't think there's a point in spending a lot of time playing with this car, because it's just something's wrong with it. Let's find another car so that, okay, now this is close to what my actual experience is, and then that's where now you can use that tool more effectively versus like just trying to learn to drive around a car that's like there's just something off with it.
Yeah, I think one of the things we learned too is you can't just pick a car and run with it. Like you need to go make sure that you've got appropriate tires added in Assetto Corsa, and we have to touch the alignment every single time we load up a new game, because it like comes with zero everything. So it's just everything feels real pushy and extra heavy when you get started. So, but I mean, you're absolutely right. Like if the car doesn't feel like what your car feels like, then why waste time trying to, because you're adapting to a different driving style now that might not necessarily apply directly to what the real world's going to be.
Right. It's just learning the way to use the tool the most effective way. That's the key to really get the benefit for it. Yes. Well, so let's move on a little bit, and I wanted to talk about Trey. You started a YouTube channel, which is called The Flying Lap. So what's really cool in watching your progression is like you got out there, you got excited about it, you started finding time, you found what it was like to be competitive, and that was kind of like this real motivator to get out there and compete. And now you've taken it even another step further, and you've created a YouTube channel called The Flying Lap to basically document what's going on in Rocky Mountain time trials. So can you talk a little bit about motivation to start that?
Well, I guess the motivation is just to grow the sport. It's because it's no fun, beating nobody. Like we need more people, because some of these classes have like one person, like a tuner one class. There's one car in it, or sport one class. There's one car in it. Like thankfully Ryan came up with the index to like try to give us all handicaps to compete with one another, because the competition is what makes it. So, I mean, that was the big motivation, was just getting the word out and just making it fun. Maybe there's selfish motivations because the off season is super long and boring. It takes forever. So I think that people will appreciate the work being done to make these episodes now in the off season more than anything. Because I mean, there's no point of watching the video. You were just there, you lived it, a week ago, and it's just not that great. But that was a big part of it, and I think that's partly why I'm trying to make it the way that we're making it. Like it's not about me, it's not about my times, it's not about my progression necessarily. And if you watch the videos, like there's a lot of effort put into meeting the other drivers and talking about their achievements as well, talking about podium and just the competition in general. And that was the whole point. And it like makes me happy to find out like that there are people that are talking about coming out because they've watched some of the episodes and they're like, wow, that seems like a really great group of people, and I could go hang out with them. And there's people that are out there and it's their first time and they have bone stock cars and factory brakes or whatever. And yeah, they're not top of the podium, but they seem like they're having a great time because they said so in their interview.
Right. Well, and that's like, there's a story, like your story, your experience, how you got into the sport is like for the people that get hooked, that get into it, like a lot of them have the similar path, the similar story, the similar inroad into why they really dig it. And all of a sudden that becomes just the thing that they want to do. And yeah, well, and what I like about it is like there's for every one person that gets out there and tries it, there's probably 10 people that are kind of wanting to try it, that are interested in doing it, but just like we were talking about at the beginning, there's all these kind of concerns, barriers that we can put up to prevent us from even getting out there the first time, even if it's not to compete, just to drive a car at speed. There's and they're, I would say that they're valid concerns. I mean, I don't want to discount, like, well, what if I go off and I break something? What if the car overheats? What if the car gets damaged? And most of the time, these things don't happen. But like when you're going out to the track for the first time, I mean, there's a lot to learn, and especially even like you're saying, driving the car for a full 20-minute session at full 10 tenths. I mean, if the car's totally stock, that might not be the greatest thing. If you haven't done brake fluid and brake pads, your brakes might not work for you all that whole 20-minute period. And it's certainly, like, that's one of the things we've tried to talk about, is to give people these pointers of, like, well, if you can just do these couple simple things, you'll have hopefully a better experience the first time out. But what I particularly like about what you're doing with your channel is you're trying to capture that story. And I think the more that we can get that story out there to people, the more that we can let people know this is what it is. This is what it's all about. This is what the events go like. This is what the weekends are like. This is what the community is like. This, it's not like you're going to be out there and nobody's going to talk to you because it's your first time out, and they're all going to, like, ignore you or anything. Like, it just being out there, like, people are going to come up. They're going to talk to you about your car. What brought you out here? Do you need anything? How's it going? What can we do to help? I mean, it's the more that we can get that out there, that story, that information out there, I think it helps to break down the barriers for more new people to come out and participate.
I was very apprehensive of doing anything to begin with as well. Like, before I had the STI, I had the BRZ, and it was the 2016 Hyper Blue, and I had supercharged it, and it was like super awesome. And I just ran across a neighbor who happened to be packing up his car to go to the drag strip in Pueblo. And I had thought about it before, watched a bunch of videos, and what you run across online is a lot of people just saying, just go, just do it. It's not that big of a deal. That's not quite encouraging enough, I guess. I think seeing is believing, and, like, seeing that person who's like, oh man, this is like my first time and I'm having a blast, and it's not nearly as scary as I thought it was. But it's easy to be apprehensive about getting out there, for sure, because if you play that game of what ifs, like, of course, it could happen. Technically, not probable, but it could.
Well, and that's where, like, having a good community, which we do have here in Colorado, is great. Having a good system, like, this is where, like, anybody that comes in, I've had multiple conversations with people where NASA, I think, is a great inroad to driving at the track, because they have a really good structure and a really good way to take somebody that is a complete novice, that's never driven on track before, and just really kind of introduce them to what it's like to drive on speed, with a lot of first-person guidance, and kind of, like, it's under control. Like, there's no passing. Like, this is just you driving at the track. Here's what that's like. Here's what you have to pay attention to. And I think there's a lot of people where, if you can have a good experience that first time or the first 2 times you go to the track, then that's where you can really enjoy it, and that's where you appreciate it. You get hooked, and then you keep coming back. Like, I've seen, like, some of the open lapping days that don't have that structure. It can be a little bit more of the Wild West out there, where can be a little bit more intimidating, and, like, that could be much more of a turnoff for people, I think. So, like, giving people the idea of, like, this is what it's like, and then here's a good way to get into it and have a positive experience the first time is a really helpful thing. What do you think, Dusix? What do you think for the people out there that want to get involved, or maybe that are sitting on the sidelines, like, what the best way in to have a good experience the first day or two out is?
I think the biggest difference between, like, NASA and SCCA, and I was the competition director last year for both of them, from a time trials perspective, is that NASA is, even though they do a great job on kind of, like, building your skills up and stuff, they're also quite a bit more serious. So, like, you go out, and from a competitive environment, it can be, like, way more intimidating. These cars are, like, pretty much race cars with slicks. These dudes are breaking records all over the country. These are guys who are, out there competing for tires. I mean, it's in contingencies. It's really intense. But it's awesome. Like if you're trying to push your skills to like the next level, that's definitely a great environment to be in, especially locally. SCCA is kind of a little bit more tailored towards street cars. So like the cars you're going to be on track with are not going to be on slicks. They're going to be all on street tires. It can be easy, like lower barriers of entry as far as modifications go. Stuff that's kind of like more fun to do too, where NASA puts like a heavy emphasis. Their structure is built on power to weight. SCCA structure is built on modifications. And so like people who are modding their cars like to have certain types of wheels, or like, well, I really want to do this cold air intake, or I want to do this turbo, or I want to run E85 or whatever. And so both of them kind of have their own like feel and their own experience. But with SCCA not having like a real concrete HPDE, like I think the closest thing you'd have would be like Track Night in America. You're really kind of like hitting the ground running from the competition standpoint in SCCA time trials, which has been actually working pretty good, surprisingly. Like I feel like the majority of the people, if not all the people that we've had, have been able to get up to speed with the flagging, with the braking, with the driving and stuff a lot faster than I would have expected without having that like that HPDE that NASA has. But at the same time too, it's way more of a community effort. So you got guys like Trey and like Ben and Jeff and just pretty much everybody who's got any experience at all, like really working with the noobs, the noob guys on like, hey, this is what kind of track, let's look at your data. Oh, you don't know what data is? Let's get this set up. This is what we do. And I do track walks and stuff between, like Saturday nights. And I think the SCCA does a lot better job locally anyway, as far as establishing a community where it's kind of like everybody is working together, like in a big, like a big family to get everybody up to speed. And when you kind of get in that really, really competitive NASA environment, it's a little bit more like, well, this is my trade secret and this is my trade secret. And because everybody's competing against each other for like almost like money, and it just changes the attitudes. Yeah, it just changes the attitudes a little bit. And I don't know. So I like both of them, and I definitely love being part of both of them because it kind of like, cool, I can beat up on these guys today, but tomorrow I'm gonna get my ass handed to me by a different club. And so I kind of like that. Like one will push you further, but the other one will get you where you need to be in a competitive environment at the same time. So it's interesting. I'm not going to say that NASA time trials or SCCA time trials is going to kill NASA HPDE because I don't think it is, but it does get people into that competitive environment faster. And as long as everybody in the SCCA stays true to that community leading, I think it'll continue to be successful, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, I think like for anybody that's not in Colorado, that's not in this region, that is curious, I think the best path for you is to try both of them. Check out both systems and see which community, which group you like the best, and then whichever one you like, whichever one you're most comfortable with, then just progress on, and then more than likely at some point you'll be able to jump back and forth between both.
A lot of people do both.
Yeah.
Like Son
like
goes
Ben,
to both, and Ben goes to both.
Yeah.
You go to both. If you could afford it, do it.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think Colorado's really lucky too. I'm sure the Southeast is really stacked on both sides, but you get into other parts of the Rocky Mountain area, like in this chunk of the country, like Utah's only got NASA. I mean, Arizona's only got NASA, so I mean, we're really lucky in this area to have like a really thriving NASA and SCCA time trials and road racing program. I feel like that's outside of being in the Southeast, but the Southeast, the tracks are way more dense. It's like there's way more tracks in an area that people have heard of, like Road Atlanta. People have heard of, Barber Motorsports Park and BIR and all that stuff. And so we're pretty lucky to have, I think, two really thriving areas competing like pretty much in the same area. Like I think that's really nice with what we have out here.
For sure. Well, and so as we're getting close to an hour here, just to maybe kind of wrap up. So Trey, what is on the future? Like now that you've gotten in, you enjoy this, you're competing again for your second season. Like what is the rest of this season look like for you, and kind of what is what is on your mind for the horizon?
I think there's going to be any at least changes for the vehicle for the rest of this season for sure. I mean, there's lots of ideas and things like for the YouTube channel specifically. Like I want to do after the 4th event, we start having drops for the season points. So I kind of want to get with Ryan and Brandon at PPIR and just talk about predictions and outcomes, just like entertaining for the sport or whatever. We've got Grid Life, which would be great. Like I wish I could do more Grid Life stuff. It's just not feasible to travel so much,
right?
And get out everywhere. So I really think that Colorado is just going to be my home for motorsport for a while. Plans for next year will probably just be safety. I think I'll do a second run in max class, and then maybe in 2024 I can try to go do like an unlimited class and see where that takes me. But someone's got to shut Ryan up. You know what I'm saying?
There you go. Absolutely.
Yeah, the whole internet's being unsuccessful right now in that regard.
It's all part of the game, right? But
yeah.
I mean, so Trey, if you're going to go unlimited, I mean, is it something like you've got the car? Whoa.
Oh, hey, look, there's a wild Tasso's appeared.
He must have caused my computer to do weird stuff.
His pine cones have like created a cosmic rift over there.
That's right. It's that pine cone internet does weird stuff. Do you think that you would, because you've built this car, would you continue on with that car, or do you think that would you look for another chance to maybe start off by gutting it and putting a cage in it and then build it up? Or
no, I think I've got too much money in this car to abandon it. That's for sure. It's just gonna have to. I think the big push for unlimited in the future would just be like, let's just try to find out where I can drop weight, really. Sure. And because there's only so much I can try to drop for max class. So it's like, plus I can see what real proper tires feel like, get on some slicks or something, and that's something I've never experienced. So it's just the next progression, I guess, and we'll just see how it goes. But safety is going to be the big thing for next year. I need to get Hans and proper belts, because right now I've just used the factory 3-point, and I mean the only safety thing I've got is I've got a fire extinguisher in the car with me, so that's good.
Well, that's good.
I get made fun of because I'm like this scrub that just shows up. I'm just wearing like whatever, and I don't have gloves, and you get all these guys in their race suits and stuff just looking at you like whatever.
We take safety pretty serious around these parts. I haven't been on fire twice myself, so. But I mean, that being said, though, another reason why I give Trey such a hard time about being safe, and he's definitely underselling it, is that Trey is stupid fast right now. I mean, at La Junta, he ran almost like a low 54 flat. Like you almost ran like a 53.
It was a 53.
Like, oh, it was a 53. I mean,
like a 53.9 or 53.8 or something like that.
That's like fast. The fastest street car I've ever personally witnessed in a competition environment was Ben Council's 900 horsepower twin turbo full aero vet that ran like a 52.1. So like to be like within spitting distance of that in a street car on street tires is crazy. I mean, you went to Pueblo and you ran a 139.5, right? Mm-hmm. Which is, I mean, not even as like less than a second off the fastest I've ever been out there. And I was on Pirellis, and now you're eyeballing high planes thinking like, I think 55s, 56s, and already second faster than I've ever been there.
I don't know about that. We'll see. I'm like 57s, 58s, so I think I'm trying to be realistic, but I would love.
And that's still crazy fast.
Yeah.
Dude, in a street car, on street tires, with a 3-point seatbelt, and I don't know how you're holding on.
Yeah.
The seat helps a lot.
This is a point. It's a point that it's worth making, is that like it's a car that is designed like it has like airbags and like the seat belts and stuff, but those things are not designed for triple digit speeds necessarily. I mean, they will still be way better than not having any of those systems at, like, if you have an incident in over 100 miles an hour, but it's not like optimal for that kind of circumstance. And so you hope that nothing ever happens, and hopefully nothing ever will happen, but you never know. You never know what you're in for. Weird stuff happens. I was watching a video, I think it was from High Plains, where some car's alternator fell off. Some guy driving around, and all of a sudden this alternator just flies up and hits like dead center in the windshield. Like, you can't plan for everything, but I mean, just weird stuff happens. So yeah, it's to be able to get out of the car and come back and do it again at some point and be none the worse for wear is it's something as you get older, it kind of pops in your mind from time to time.
And the stock stuff is way safer than the improper stuff too, because we've talked about that, and we see people out there with scary like harness bars and like 4-point seat belts that are like rolling up on their fucking nipples and shit like that. It's just like, so the stock stuff is really the safest until you go to the next big jump, you know. And so definitely not trying to scare Trey by any means. I wish Trey had a hybrid Hans, you know. I wish he had that, but it's okay. You know, he's doing good things and definitely not trying to scare him out of speed. At least High Plains is like, for us, one of the safest tracks that we go to, I think.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's like, you know, planning for the future. Sometimes it's like bringing in some of those safety elements, and sometimes it's improving the car. So like they both do go hand in hand.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Yeah. So Trey, like, yeah, maybe, you know, I'll get faster someday. Fucking Trey is already stupid fast.
Yeah, that is moving. Yeah, anything like in the very low twos and heck to get below 2 minutes at High Plains is you are moving everywhere on the track. There's no slow spot on that track if you're making that kind of time.
The power's helping for sure. Like the car, like before last year was like 265 was peak, and this year it's a 400 peak. But the big difference is where I'm making the power though too. That turbo carries it all the way up to redline.
Yeah.
Whereas before, like, you know, peak powers are like, I don't know, 5,000 RPM. Like, but how often are you at 5,000 RPM? It's all just downhill from there in that car with that factory VF48.
Yeah.
So the turbos, man, it's fast. I think I was hitting like the fastest I went at Pueblo was 136 by the end of the straight, and we'll see what happens at High Plains.
That's 11 miles an hour faster than I was going.
Wow.
It doesn't like feel, I don't know. I feel like if you're watching your tack and your speeds while you're on track, you're doing the wrong thing. All you're going to do is scare the hell out of yourself.
Right.
Just put some tape over it and just look at the GPS data when you get off and be like, oh, wow, I was going fast.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. With Pueblo though, because it's a drag strip, like if something goes haywire on that front straight, like you have a drag strip with run out and stuff. But at High Plains, you have turn 4 and there's a big mound of dirt that's your runoff.
Yeah.
So
that's a lot tighter turn. Yeah, I'll have to be careful going out through there. There's a couple turns that scare the heck out of me at High Plains. I think it's 4, 10, and 1.
Sure.
Yeah, hopefully nobody
4 trying to go as fast as possible. Yeah.
No. Remember, I was telling those noobs, like, what turns are ones to be scared of? I'm like, I'm not going to tell you what turns to be scared of, because if you know which turns to be scared of, you're not going to push it in those turns.
Yeah,
true.
I was like, but there are turns to be scared of for sure. But
to be fair, turn 4 is pretty like self-explanatory. Yeah, turn 1 that can lull you into a little bit more of a like, oh, it's not that big of a deal.
Oh.
But
turn 1 can flip you like a coin for sure. Apparently.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think Jeff West had a pretty close call last year too, right, at the SCCA event. Yeah. Oh, I guess I tried to roll my car there at turn 1, so
Yep.
Not a big deal.
Take too much curb. Yeah.
Too much curb is what it is. All what it boils down to.
Yeah.
Those curbs are aggressive out there. I'm pretty sure that's why I bent my front coil bodies. It had to have been High Plains, and it had to have been just curbs, because I haven't been off track. Like, how else have you been in suspension? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite High Plains moments last year is when somebody came up to me and said, well, how late should you be braking? I was like, well, let's watch Trey. Like, well, not that late.
I lost my brakes that very turn. Yep.
Just yeeted it there in turn 1. It's like, not like that.
I think that was on the R10s. That day I was like, it's time to get something that can handle the heat, because they're fading to where they're just useless.
Oh, man.
Oh, it's so funny. Like perfect timing.
So
it's super good times.
Yeah, brake later until you do this, until you just completely offshoot, and then pull it back 1 notch, and then that's a good spot.
See, I like a lot of people do it that way, where they're like, well, if you're not going off track or not pushing tires off the track, then you're not going. You don't know what the boundaries of the car are. And I've been quite the opposite, where it's like I work up to where I'm almost doing it, and then that's my spot. But some people learn the opposite. Like, they need to just wait until the tires break loose, and they're like, okay, well, now I'll just pull it back. But it's not worth it to me.
Yeah, I think it's just the mindset. Like I am like that. I do not want to go completely like way too fast into a corner and just like go off and see what happens and then know that okay, well just a little bit slower than that I should be okay. It's like I prefer to gradually build up, but it's like you've got to kind of force yourself to like not get comfortable and either carry more speed or brake a little bit later until you just get to that point where you can just barely, like you're turning in, you're holding the cornering speed, but the tires are kind of starting to squeal, and then you can just barely keep it in so that the car is just drifting out to the outside of the track and then it's like, all right, well, that's probably about it. But it takes a little bit of trial and error to find it that way, but I'm in no hurry.
It takes longer, I think. Simming helps for sure. But again, you have to have that right mindset. I don't know, that I have the same mindset in the sim where it's like, okay, I'll just push a little bit harder, and then finally maybe I'll go off, but I won't. I mean, and Ryan can attest to that too, because we get to like the actual race wheel to wheel. And he's like, you brake too early or you brake too soon. Like our lap times are like identical, but we run the laps totally different. But I'll just ease into some of these things and he's the opposite.
Yeah. It's I don't know if I'd say I'm the opposite, but I got a little bit more seat time. I think the mental game I think is really important, and I think you undersell yourself on that. Like when you went out to like the great example is at Pueblo, you went out, you were on the fresh AO52s, everything was ready to go, and you basically turned on your first and your second lap to the thousandth of a second, the same lap time, but like you were saying, they were just speed in different spots. Like getting that mental game like on lock is part of the game too.
Yep. If I could have combined those, that would have been almost into the 38s. It was like a 39 flat if I would have ran just as fast the first half and the second half and combined those two. But it wasn't worth. I mean, at that point, I felt like I'm trying to save tires for the rest of the year, so I just can't keep throwing money at it, or my wife would kill me. So that's when I had to give up my little battle with Corey in his BMW. I had him that one by like, what was it, like 0.3 of a second, and then he came out swinging the next one. I was so bummed about it, but man, he looked happy.
You had him in the fences, man. Like he basically corded a set like 2 Pirellis on Saturday, and then he went out like to try and go out and try and stab you off, basically, knowing you're going to be on AO52s on Sunday. He corded 2 3Rs on Sunday. So he's like, and then he was behind, and he went out and did Pirellis on the front and 3Rs in the rear to just try and beat you. It was like that at La Junta too. Like at La Junta, he wasn't even going to run those tires.
La Junta was even closer.
Yeah, La Junta, he wasn't even going to run the 3Rs. He was saving them for Road Atlanta with GTA, and you pushed him to push, like, to go beyond his comfort level. So, which is awesome. It means you're pushing him and he's pushing you in a way. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That's what's so great about competition works. I mean, it's just fun.
Yeah.
That's what's so great about I love this community. Like it really is like a family. Like we all bullshit between events. We all keep in touch outside of the season and stuff, get together and do things. I don't know. It's great. Like I look forward to going out to the track just because I'd say my friends are out there now. Like if I didn't have somebody to go with, and that's why like meeting Robbie and him pushing me, like that helped me. Like that was my comfort level. And I think that's a lot of what we're trying to sell on this YouTube channel and stuff. Is like we're very open and welcome to having new people join, and people are going to be friendly, and you can find friends for sure. It's more than just going fast.
That's the coolest thing is to try and break down one of the barriers even for going to the track is like if you don't know anybody, it's like a whole big group of people that you don't know. How welcoming are they going to be? And it's really cool that we have such a good community here in the Rocky Mountain area. Oh, yeah. And that's I mean, having that good experience, like we said before, like where you go out there and people are friendly, they're interested in why you came out, what's going on with your car, you know, are you having fun? Like that's intoxicating.
They've totally taken the bait too. Like after the first event, we had Tripp went and was talking about buying tires. Dean went and bought tires and wheels. Devin is going to get new tires. Kevin Durshay, I'm going to say his name wrong. He can hear it and yell at me later. he went and bought wheels and tires. Like all these guys are like, cool, I'm in it. Like, let's do this. I'm gonna compete now and take this more seriously, and making just lots of changes. I like and addressing their problems. Like, I'm overheating. I need to change my fluids, or I need to get a different radiator. And all like these new people that are coming out are totally just they're finding their groove, and they've got it. They've got the bug, and that's what it's all about.
That's awesome.
I love it.
Yeah, very cool. Absolutely.
Yeah, and the competition environment is strong enough too that there's just like whatever edge they can find too. And you know, we talk about how like, well, just get out there and see what you like, and then go for like those dudes are like, I need to get these springs, I need to get these shocks, I need to get this. I'm like, I mean, because these guys are all like competing against each other at the same time, and just La Junta is almost like such a teaser because the track is so much easier to learn in a way, and it's more straightforward than then you get to Pueblo, and that track is like the opposite. It's like the most complicated track and the most rhythm track and the most like the least straightforward. At least High Plains will be a little bit more inspirational, I think, because there's so many ways to go fast at that track. I feel like Pueblo is so much harder. And so,
La Junta too, the variance in the times between the fastest cars and the slowest cars is a lot tighter. So a lot of the new folks come out and they're like, wow, I'm only like just this tiny bit off of like these fast people. And it's really confidence inspiring. And then I think, Pueblo might have stomped on some hearts for sure. I know Kevin was feeling it. He was really disappointed in himself. I'm like, you came out for one day. It's your first time on this track, and it's your second time on a track, period. Like you just can't set records to set records.
And Pueblo's not a track that you go out on your first time and be like, oh yeah, I totally got this thing figured out. And if you think that, you probably don't.
Right. Well, and High Plains is like that too. I mean, there's a lot of nuance to High Plains to go fast.
Yeah.
So
for sure. And that's why I like doing the track walks too. I mean, doing the track walks, I think, helps get people up to speed. It's kind of like cheating too. I mean, we joke with like NASA as far as instruction or grid life is that you don't coach people on the fast line, you coach people on the school line. But when it gets to this SCCA environment where I'm trying to get people up to speed faster, you are kind of coaching. I am kind of coaching people on the fast line, and I don't know if it's good or bad yet. Trey might be like proof that maybe that's okay and you can get away with it. But
it just depends on how you take it. Like if you kind of botch it a little bit, you need if you're talking about 4, I mean, that line is faster if you've got the balls to take 4 that fast. But if you find out as you're going through 4 that, oh, my car's not pushing all the way to the edge like I thought it was, I have way more grip, I'm obviously slower, try to recoup some of that lost time by going back to more of a school line and set up 5 a little bit more. I've found that helps me if I just don't feel brave on a given day. I don't know if it's proof that line's fast. Like you just have to be consistent and just have balls of steel.
Yeah. Well, as you're bringing people in, it's like if the fast line has like a very high risk reward quotient, like that's where you're more on that line where if it goes right, it's going to be much faster. If it goes wrong, you're jumping the car. Exactly. You're gonna skip from 4 to 6. Yeah. And then you might be out into the buffalo farm that's over the hill, and you're halfway home. Yeah.
That's how I get nervous about it too. And and it's for like a track like PPIR, the risks are so much higher, and it's just like I'm really timid with trying to describe certain line choices and stuff at PPIR. But you get to High Plains, and I'm like, I mean, the worst that's going to happen is they're going to go off. Maybe I'm not going to be like really sell turn 1 hard, but maybe I'll try and sell turn 4 because it's just they're going off track. But like you make a mistake out here at PPIR, I think Brett Cortusio kind of, not that I coached him at all, but he was like, had divine super tight car inspiration. And he was like, fuck, Ryan can go through it that fast. I can go through it that fast. And he found out when he tried that you can't go through it that fast in a street car. And he had a slight wall scrub, but nothing that like was extremely detrimental. But it was like that reminder that like you in Trey's instance, like Trey's talking about, man, I work up to the thing and then figure out, okay, that's where I want to be. PPR is not one of those places where you overdo it and you come back. Usually you can overdo it and then there's just no coming back. I mean?
Right.
It's a high risk track out here for sure.
And if you overdo it too much, like if you're just going in a little bit too fast, if you just turned in a little bit too early, if you came onto the throttle just a little bit too early, if you can get the input from the car to tell you that has happened, and if you know what those controls are, you basically can sacrifice the exit to keep the car on track, to keep the car under control. But you have to know all of those things, and you have to be able to subconsciously know that and take those actions as it's happening to keep the car in control. If you don't have those tools, if you don't have that in your toolbox, then that's where things can it just kind of escalates from there.
A lot of these new people don't. That was like one of my favorite things. So I didn't get to talk to him after. I talked with Brandon Oglesby. We met the other day just to talk about flying lap channel stuff. And he was talking about his buddy, Adam, that was out there. And Adam went to La Junta for the school day, and he stayed for a couple more. And he was driving this black Civic, and he had like winter tires on the back. And like, it wasn't the greatest setup. But after he drove for a while, he was telling Brandon, like, he's like, hey man, like before I came out here, like I thought that I was the shit driver. Like I could go out there and like all y'all are just a bunch of chumps. Like I know how to do this. I watch movies or whatever. And then he was like, no, this is totally different. But I mean, that's just to say, like, even if you feel like you know it, like if you're going out the track for the first time, you should just ease into it and work your way up to it. Don't just full send it and bring it back. At least right out of the gate, because you're not going to know how to really handle your car, like you're saying, John, like how to correct something like that. Like not necessarily. You've probably never been in that situation.
Or when you screwed it up, when it's like when you've reached the point of no return. I felt like that with Brett. Like Brett was like, oh yeah, the lights are telling me I'm good. I mean, I could see Ryan, he's doing it. It's like, oh no, too late.
Right.
You know.
Well, and to an extent, I mean, this is, I think, where a simulator is a valuable tool, because when things get a little bit off and you just hit reset, you're not learning that there are controls that you still have. And granted, it's not in the real world. It's not going to be 100%. But if you don't just hit the reset and you try and find inputs that you can use to keep the car under control, whatever, you're developing those tools. And sometimes you just have to kind of learn that the hard way at the track. But I think the simulator is another way that you can kind of also try and hone in on those skills as well.
I really preach, do not save it.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. I was going to say, for at least for the new folks too, like they've been really good about like Kevin went off and just kept the wheel straight, right on the brake, foot on the clutch, nothing dramatic. And it was like, that's the best kind of off you can wish for, is just something just not dramatic at all.
Yeah.
But like I think John's probably getting more at like little tiny inputs and corrections more than like I'm a full spin. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to go off, you want to go off straight. If you can go off straight, that's going to be your best case scenario every single time. Yeah. But if you can just kind of like realize like that you have the ability at like turn in, if there's an error at turn in, you still have the whole corner to correct it.
Yeah.
If you mess up the apex, there's something going on with where you apex, the throttle input, all those, whatever, you still have to the exit to fix it, to try and keep it on the track. And, you know, if you can try and learn what those tools are, then that gives you a lot better skill set to kind of push more, because then, you know, like you realize, like, I'm having to lift off, I'm having to, you know, tap on the brake a little bit where I don't want to. Like, all right, well, let's try different setup, better setup for the next corner, versus just always keeping your foot in it.
That's going to be the hardest thing to learn, what you're describing. Like, I don't have any of that skill set at all. If my car, if it starts to lose the tail even a little bit, I just like lift. I'm like, nah, I don't like this. And Pueblo this year was a terrible experience. I had so much front grip and no rear grip, and that car wanted to just yeet around every corner. And I did go off like a hard off for the first time ever, and it really wasn't as dramatic as I would have thought it would have been. Like, it was just kind of like, I'm mad at Corey for not having the video of it, but I was like sideways all the way, like a couple 100 feet all the way through 5 into the dirt.
I remember you come out to me like, the car is just freaking out. It's just spinning out. I'm like, calm down. Everything has changed. Like, you got to work into it. That was that one moment like, oh, I know what this does. It's just like, nope. But it is pretty funny. Just that, I wouldn't even say it was panic. It was like the disbelief. Like, I don't know what's going on. What is it?
It was such a dramatic change, though. Like, if you think about it, like, I had finished braking, I was off the brake, car was balanced, I wasn't on the throttle. Like, the only input I had was this, and I gave it like that much, and the rear just went out from behind me. And I was in the car like, what the hell is going on, man?
Man, that happens, and that's as you start to change the car. Like, that's one of the things. Like, again, you hope that every part that you put on, every change that you make is going to be the right one, and it's going to make it better and better. But it doesn't always happen that way, and sometimes, like that, what you're describing, it's a change that didn't help or change the car so much that it's now worse in a certain situation. And like you had that experience, you went off. And it sounds like, talking to Dussex, you're able to figure out what you needed to do to change the setup to get the car to be back.
Yeah, a lot of it was expecting. Yeah, so we decreased the damping in the rear. I went like 3 clicks, and then I ended up going 3 more because the second time I went out, it wasn't enough. I let some air out of the tires just to like try to get some grip in the rear. A part of me is wondering though too, like, how good are these used RS4s that I've got? Like, maybe because I know I've got the more grippier, like the better looking ones up front too. So that could have had something to do with it, because the car was more balanced the third session when I put the AO52s on, but I've had those for a while, and like I make sure that they're rotated out right and they look okay. So I don't know, but now the alignment's touched up again. I've got more in the rear after the new Voodoo rear toe arms. Thanks, John. So we'll see what we can do high planes.
Cool.
Yeah. What do we figure out? The camber limit in the rear of a VA is 3.3 degrees when you set the toe arms at max.
Yeah.
I was like, that's not enough.
3.3, and it was like 5.5 up front with 3.2 or something in the rear.
Yeah.
It's something, but I mean, if you've got that much of a discrepancy, I mean that in and of itself can cause that instability in the rear. Yeah.
I should have known. I usually leave more air in the rear just because the fronts get like more heat put into them, so they come up to temperature. So I was just treating when I went out there, I treated the car like I had it set up last year, which was much more of a balanced alignment, and I just added insult to injury with my grip situation on the rear for sure. It's totally my fault, but I like to show up and just wave around, and
that's how you learn. That's how you learn. You gotta do it. It's just, you've got to understand, like you had the wherewithal to know that, okay, things are different with the car. I've changed these things. Like, it's not behaving the way that you wanted it to. It's not the way that you're expecting it to behave, but it's a result of these changes that you made. So like, what can you do to kind of dial it back, try and undo some of the change to get it back to where you were. So it's like, you knew at least where to look, which is really helpful.
Well, Ryan knew where to look.
Which is, it's helpful to have Ryan or yeah.
I was in one of my panicky moods after that happened, and I couldn't think straight. So that's just a personality flaw, I'll say.
That's okay.
It's all that drag racing you did.
It's all that.
That's right.
My lots and lots of drag racing experience. Sorry, inside joke. Ryan makes fun of me because I went and did 2 drag races in my BRC.
Oh man,
that's right. Seat time is seat time, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap this up because Trey, we've taken a lot of your day, and definitely want to thank you very much for setting aside the time and coming on. Really appreciate it. And I know Dussex is wrapping up here. Any other things you wanted to ask Trey or mention?
I think Trey is underselling himself on his speed, so I'm just excited. I'm excited about going to Topeka. He's got me all fired up. I don't know. I'm excited that really Trey is this involved and giving back. And he's really like the mantra that I feel like I try and adopt. I think he's really running with it. So, which is great because I don't have enough time to. So thank you to Trey. I mean, a lot of, I think, the growing and the continued growth of motorsports in Colorado, at least from the SCCA front, is coming from that guy over there. So I really appreciate the support and the help. So,
and the community as a whole,
for me a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, check out the Flying Lap YouTube page. I'll put a link up, or maybe it'll be at the beginning, and I'll put it in somewhere. But if you're interested, if you want to go to the track, check out SCCA, check out Track Night America, check out NASA. Like, get out there, even if it's just to go out there and watch an event, not to even drive, but just to see what it's like, and then pick the one that you want to actually go out to and drive. And if you see any of these friendly faces around, now you have a good sense that there's a good community out there, a good support network to hopefully get you out there and have a good experience your first time out. So, yeah. Well, good stuff.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
Of course, Trey. Thanks again for coming on. Thanks everybody for listening. Thanks for your support as always. And until next time, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatirons Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatirons.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.